This in the first wave was not much seen in Australia, but now unfortunately in second wave, though we think that Australian media would be a bit more sensible, but we see that there are certain tabloid journalists who are again picking up similar vicious blame game against the minority communities here. If I could draw attention towards the TV episode run on 26th of June by Sky News, Peter Credlin, who is one of the reporters there, she mentioned publicly on the TV channel that a gathering, or she dated it to 23rd May or something, and she said the second wave of coronavirus is triggered because of a Ramadan feast, an Eid Ramadan feast, which was held for South Sudanese community who are migrants. So in one statement, she blamed the migrants. She specifically blamed the South Sudanese community, and she blamed the Muslim festival, that is Eid and Ramadan.
At least one of the new virus hotspots, with 14 new infections so far, was triggered by an end of Ramadan feast in Coburg for South Sudanese migrants from Melbourne's northern and southeastern suburbs.
Then we saw that on 12th of July, we had Andrew Bolt writing for Heraldson, where he made the heading that migrants responsible for the Victorian coronavirus outbreak. And he specifically then said that the Towers, the Housing Commission outbreak is mostly with the people who are migrants, the African community. He then said Taqwa College, which is mainly Muslim migrants again, and he blamed the immigrant community on the whole.
On Sky, of course, the Labour Premier can do nothing right. But in his latest Herald Sun column, Sky's Andrew Bolt found another culprit to blame: multiculturalism.
Is it coincidence that the three worst virus hotspots in Victoria have been 7 public housing commission towers, 145 cases, the Taqwa College, 134, and the Cedar Meats Abattoir, 111? Many of the people in those towers are immigrants, often from Africa. The Taqwa community is Muslim, many immigrants.
So we did see very clearly and explicit statements of Islamophobia along with racism against migrants here in Australia during the early days of second wave. So yes, I wouldn't deny that there has been Islamophobia. Definitely there were elements that were seen.
Sure. So following on this question, as your kids go to Taqwa College, I believe,
right,
and we have heard some news articles and news coverage and media coverage about the Taqwa cluster. So what are your comments on this particular issue?
Right. Well, if somebody who has been aware of the media gimmick in the last 2 weeks, since the first week of July, we have continuously seen media writing articles, many channels, many newspapers writing article after article talking about Taqwa cluster. Now, yes, there has been a number of cases that has been linked to Taqwa College, and there has been a lot of people who have been affected through human transmission there. Now, what is interesting to note here is, and what is an important point to be made before we delve into this subject is, as I said earlier, this is a pandemic that we are dealing with. The state government of Victoria, the federal government of Australia is working hard day in, day out. The Department of Health, Board of Education, and various other expert departments are working hard in order to contain this virus. So an outbreak is not something which can be blamed on an individual or a group of people or a minority community. It is a problem that we all Australians face together. It is a problem that all Melburnians and Victorians are facing together. As the Prime Minister said, and I repeat his statement, we are all in this together. The moment we fight and put blame on each other, it exposes our hatred and irrational racism towards each other. So this needs to be condemned, and we need to be vocal against any such discrimination and bias towards any group. Having said that, now let's come and take a step back and see what has been happening. From the 10th of June started pretty much the new cases of second wave of virus here in Victoria. The schools had all gone off. There were holidays declared for schools, or what you call e-learning, for the second term. The term 2, which was from May onwards, was into e-learning mode. So kids were all learning from home. Now, government, looking at the numbers going down, the federal government announced that now the kids can go back to the school. So term 2, which was already declared closed, was now reopened, and the schools were forced to take kids back to school. So the last 2 to 3 weeks before term 3 holidays term 2 holidays were asked to come back to the school. So Al Taqwa also, along with all the other dozens, and rather I would say hundreds of schools across Australia, went back to the face-to-face teaching mode, and every school opened up. Now just in Victoria alone, more than 30 schools have been found with a case of coronavirus. Now, the first case of Al Taqwa cluster was reported on the 27th of June, after the schools went for holidays.
Can I just interject something?
Right.
What do you mean by the word cluster?
Right.
Because I think there's a lot of confusion
Sure.
around the word cluster itself.
Right. I think it's very important that the point that you brought up. See, a cluster does not mean the students and staff of that school. So if you say Al Taqwa College had 100 plus cases of coronavirus, or Al Taqwa cluster had coronavirus cases, that does not mean 100 members of the Al Taqwa school got coronavirus positive. No. What it means is people related to them, people who they came into contact with, is all considered as a cluster. So it could be a staff member who may have had a positive case through the staff member, or the staff member may have had it from somebody else who has visited another office, another hospital, another workplace, and through that person has come to Al Taqwa. So all of this is considered a cluster. Al Taqwa member, staff member, or the student, plus all the family members of those members, and from whom they may have been transmitted, and from them whoever else may have been transmitted. So they're all considered a cluster. So the cluster does not mean the 2,600 people of Al Taqwa College itself. It means all those who came into contact with them is all considered Al Taqwa cluster. So that is what a cluster would mean. So it is important to differentiate between the number of people infected at the school itself and compared to the entire cluster. Now, so 27 June was the first staff member reported to have had the coronavirus case, and the staff member did not attend the last 2 or 3 days of the school because not being well, but possibly there was a transmission beforehand. Now the Department of Health, DHHS of Victoria, has made it publicly known that they could not trace the origin of this cluster. What they said is the possibility, the higher probability is it was a family who had it first, and through them the transmission reached the school. So it is not from the school that went out there, but it is from outside that may have had come into the school. Having said that, they made it absolutely clear it is quite difficult to claim as an absolutist statement that where did it all begin. So it's always a hard thing to do the contact tracing and mapping. Now coming to the point, now Al Taqwa cluster has happened. My 4 kids, I've got 4 kids, alhamdulillah, and they all go to Al Taqwa College. So I am somebody who is having that relationship with the school. I live next door to the school itself, so I have that relationship as well. I'm a regular attendee at the masjid of the school. So all of this brings me into the limelight or into relationship with this cluster. Now, alhamdulillah, my family has all tested negative. All the other contacts that I have, all the families that I personally know, put say 25 families, maybe around 100 people, alhamdulillah, all of them have tested negative. So it's not that everybody else has been impacted, but definitely there are people, there are families, there are staff members, and there are kids who have been affected. But what we are talking about here is media's blame game against Al Taqwa College. Did Al Taqwa had any role to play in this, is the question to be asked. Now some people are having the right questions, such as why did Al Taqwa College open up as a school while knowing that there was danger for the kids? The second question, or the second concern that the parents have, and I as a parent also may ask the same question, is has Al Taqwa College administration taken enough precautions to avoid such a cluster? Now these two are the most important questions. The first point here is people have the right to ask questions, and people should ask questions. Point number 2 is make sure that you direct your questions to the right departments, to the right authorities. If somebody is going to blame any school, not just Al Taqwa alone, not just Al Taqwa, but any school for opening up in term 2, then it is not the schools to be blamed. It is the Board of Education, it is the Department of Health, it is the Prime Minister of Australia who publicly said on record that schools are safe for kids to go back. This was the mantra that was repeated continuously before forcing schools to open up. So if anybody is to be blamed, I'm not saying we should blame anybody, but I'm saying if anyone is to be blamed, then that is pretty much the government, because they asked the schools to open. And further, for people's information, the Board of Education made it compulsory. It forced the schools to open up to the extent that it said if a school does not open up in term 2, they will lose the government funding. Furthermore, they even threatened that if a school does not open in term 2, their registration as a school will be cancelled. So it is not Taqwa which wanted to open the school, it is not any other school which wanted to open the school, it was the government and it was the Board of Education which forced the schools to open up. Now, as far as the hygiene and the precautionary measures are concerned, the Department of Health released guidelines for the schools. Now, once again, it is important to note here, the medical expert advice that we had in the month of June is different to what we have in the month of July now. In the month of June, we were said that this disease or this virus transmits through close contact, through unhygienic position. So if you wash hands, you keep a safe distance, then the possibility of you catching the virus is less. But now the WHO announced in the second week or the first week of July that this disease is now considered airborne transmitted. What it means is if you are in the close vicinity, in a small space like a classroom, though you maintained social distance, though everything was sanitized and cleaned, though you did not shake hands with anybody, you are still under the threat of getting transmission of the virus because sharing the same space. Now that pretty much takes away every other precautionary measure that we have been taking. So when the schools were opened, it was said it was all safe. Kids were asked to go back to the school. The guidelines were given by the Department of Health. I would say as a parent, I'm not just satisfied with Taqwa's precautionary measures, but I believe that Taqwa went far and beyond. I remember when we dropped the kids, when the second term started in the school, we received an immediate message from the school that the parents who are going to drop kids should not get down from their cars, they should leave them at the corner and leave. So there will be a passage made for the kids to walk safely. Then we saw that every child, every day before entering the school premises was temperature checked. This was not even in the guidelines of the Department of Health, but the school went far and beyond, as I said. The school was sanitized and cleaned. The kids, my kids, I asked them and they said that when they had to enter the classroom, they would have to clean their bench and their chair again, though it was already cleaned before the start of the school. And if a child had a sneeze or a cough, the child would be sent back to home. And this happened with me. I got a call from the school one day and the teacher mentioned that my child had a cough and they do not think he is fit to be in the school and I should be picking him immediately. This shows that the school took extra precautions to maintain the hygiene, and the school continuously had what you call social distancing announcements. They had notices, they had advertisements done, they had declarations done at the school. The teachers were continuously informing the kids to be maintaining hygiene and to be maintaining social distance and not to do shake hands. The hugs and shakes were all cancelled there. So all of this was delivered at the school. So I do not think anybody has the right to blame the school at any point of time. Yes, people have every right to be angry, to be frustrated and to question, but the question should go to the Department of Health, to the Board of Education for opening the schools and to the government for forcing the schools to open up in term 2. And I was dead against opening the schools in term 3, and Alhamdulillah they announced that the term 3 the schools will not have face-to-face learning but the e-learning. So Taqwa has done even amazing work in setting up the e-learning through the school portal.
Sure. Because of this media impact on the Muslim and the coverage of the news,
Right.
regular Muslims who go to the workplaces or go to schools or colleges, they are facing Islamophobia.
Right.
So how should we as Muslims living in Australia tackle this Islamophobia or hatred towards Muslims?
Right. Well, see, obviously when Islamophobia happens and it comes from top to bottom, it is being said or mentioned in the newspapers, it is being continuously parroted in the TV channels, then obviously many people across the country are going to be affected. When this becomes a currency, then you are bound to have biasness and discrimination done in different parts of the community. Now, people might face it in the workplaces, people will face it in the neighborhood, people will face it in the schools, bullying will be happening, and a lot more damage. People would even be harmed and hurt say in public transportation or while at any other workplace. So all of this is definitely happening. Now the way to tackle it is two steps strategy. One is to tackle what the media is doing and saying. For example, I quoted earlier the 26th June episode of Sky News where Peter Credlin blamed South Sudanese community and the Ramadan Eid festival. Now interestingly, immediately the South Sudanese professionals, an organization of South Sudanese community, did a public press release on 28 June challenging and questioning Peter Credlin's report. On 29 June, 3 days later, after the telecast of Sky News, Peter Credlin went again on air and apologized to the South Sudanese community for wrongfully blaming them.
To correct a factual comment that I made in my editorial on Friday night, it was an error, where I wrongly linked a specific COVID cluster in Melbourne's suburbs with the South Sudanese community. It wasn't accurate, it was incorrect, and given I pride myself on being accurate, I apologise to my viewers for getting that comment wrong, and in particular, I apologise to the South Sudanese community.
But interestingly, she does not apologise to the Muslim community for bringing up Ramadan Eid festival and blaming the Ramadan Eid festival for the spread of the coronavirus. So it is going to be understood by many irrational people across the society that maybe it's Muslims who held this outbreak of second coronavirus. But this is not the case. The Ramadan Eid festival was on 23rd of May, around that time, and there was only 5 visitors allowed at that time. And I know as a Muslim community member that Muslims shunned, gave up the Ramadan gatherings. There was no Eid gatherings, there was no iftar gatherings, no masjid organized an Eid prayer with only 5 visitors or 10 visitors at that time. And even those who did, they followed all the guidelines and the restrictions that were placed by the government. That is why you will not find any Muslim or any Muslim organization being fined or penalized for breaking the rules. And this was in May. We're talking about the second wave after 10th June. So the 14-day incubation period has also passed away. So we need to come out with this vocal voice and challenge the media narrative. So this is one thing to do. The second is to legally challenge anything that incorrectly puts the blame on the Muslim community. So this needs to be done as well. So we see that unfortunately this is not up to the standard, up to the mark, up to the expectations of the Muslim community. Obviously, the reason is we are a very small community right now. We are still growing. We are hardly 2%. So we need to really challenge these two things. One of the ways we dealt with this was there was a news report done by 7:30 ABC News, which was the reporter was Michael Atkin. And he did a very in-depth analysis of the entire situation. He held interviews with the parents on the ground, and he brought out the news up in the mainstream news. And I would recommend everybody to really go back and have a look at that. It was published on the 14th of July. It was on air as well. It was an article published by the ABC News. So you can go and watch it. And I had an opportunity to respond there as a parent. So we all, other parents also responded there. So you can see an in-depth analysis of the situation there. So there should not be any blame on Taqwa. There should not be any blame on the Muslim community, because this is a problem which is happening for all Melburnians. Right now we have crossed almost 6,000 cases in Victoria. Muslim population is hardly a tiny number. And on top of that, Muslims are across Australia. Why is it only happening in Victoria, not in other states? We know what has happened in the hotel quarantine bungle. We know what has happened with various other clusters that has happened in Victoria and elsewhere in Australia. So it is not the time to blame anybody. It is the time to work together and contain this virus that we are going through.